Manx Radio Podcasts, powered by Shaw.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Hello and welcome to the latest look back at Talking Heads. A dispute over the protection of the TT brand, a call for a review of how national services are funded, and public sector pension reforms were some of the topics up for discussion on the programme this week. Here's Stu Peters with more.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
It seems that a row could be brewing between Bushes and the Department of Economic Development. The Santon-based brewer is seeking legal advice after DED threatened to sue over the use of the letters TT. The Bushes TT brand was registered as a trademark in November 2014 and is used on the popular annual T-shirts and stickers. What do you make of the situation? Do you think that it's serious? Do you think it could upset things, or do you think it's a bit of a storm in a pint pot? And a fairly lengthy email from our friend Mark, who often makes a good point. Martin Brunschweiler, he says, has been a major supporter of the TT for around 30 years. He, like many others, has had merchandise with the phrase TT races for all that time, as we all know. Why now do the little apparatchiks in the government decide that this should be wrong? They don't own the phrase TT races, just a style of logo relating to its promotion. I would have thought that the civil servants would be much better employed trying to make life easier for those who run events for the TT, instead of thinking of ways of blocking them. Once more, this is an example of a small group of paper pushers getting involved in things of which they have no remit. Yet again, these little people trying to build up their minor empire and exert control over activities that are actually none of their business. The government is once again interfering in matters that should be none of their concern. The same apparatchiks have made a mess of the handling of the promotion of the TT over the last year, as has been reported widely in the media. This is just another example of their incompetent behaviour. Come down off the fence, Mark, why don't you? Martin Brunschweiler is just one more person who ends up being frustrated by the interference of civil servants who, as ever, don't know the meaning of the word servant. Or civil sometimes. When will these people learn to get out of the way and leave the people who actually know how to run an event such as the TT to get on with it? Best regards from Mark. Do you agree with him or not? Get in touch ideally on 66 13 68. Tell us what you think about it. Just to be fair, I suppose that it is the job of the civil servants to make sure that anything that the Isle of Man might have any ownership over brings in the most money it possibly can. And it clearly feels that it's got the rights to the letters TT in connection with the annual road races, and if anybody's going to use them, they've got to pay some sort of a licence fee, which I presume Martin hasn't been doing. But, if that's custom and practice, then it's difficult now, I would suggest, to come back and say, oh, well, actually, no, you're going to have to do this in future. Why? I've not done it for 30 years. Why would I start doing it now? And oh, dear. I was a supporter of Mr Bell's government because they lost a third of their income in their early days. They had really tough decisions to make, but used a good deal of common sense looking at the big picture. This government seemed to have hit the ground running, but oh, dear, some terrible decisions now. They've started on the destruction of our heritage railways by overturning the horse tram decision made by the last government, and now alienating TT fans worldwide. A TT without Bushes would be terrible. The government's always been jealous of Bushes because of its popularity. The government has never really understood what TT fans want. If they did, they'd assist Bushes by putting up a big screen opposite showing bikes, says Liz. Well, they used to have that. Duke Video used to provide it because a couple of years I worked on the big screen thing, doing the vision mix in the cabin at the back. Stu referenced TT on BBC 2. 155 is Coast on the programme is how the Isle of Man came to host the infamous TT road race. Now, because BBC's use the TT letter, does government get royalties? Crazy, isn't it, says Stu. My understanding is that I don't think that the government will be bothered at all if people want to use the word TT, like Ian TT Van Huntley said earlier on. Does that mean that he's got to stop it? I think the problem is that if a commercial enterprise uses the letters TT for financial gain, the government's position on that is that government, and therefore all of us really, because they're collecting money that can be used on services that we enjoy, government doesn't have the money for itself, it's for the benefit of all of us, that if somebody is using the letters TT or the logo for commercial gain, then the government ought to get some money back for it. And I don't think actually that's unreasonable. But the BBC talking about the TT road races or whatever, there's no commercial gain in that. They're just describing the event. Stu, just a storm in a TT cup, says David H. But DED is becoming a joke. Get behind local businesses and start bringing money into the island. Something that it says do what it says on the tin. Economic development, not harassing small businesses who actually do things for the island. I think it's time for the minister to step down as incompetent, and the department needs to be closed as unfit for purpose. Okay, back to the DTI maybe. The Bushes fiasco is not an isolated thing. The Joey Dunlop charity was stopped from selling JDF goods from their stall at last year's Classic TT unless they paid the DED. All the money raised by this charity is used to accommodate disabled people at the Dunlop House in Braddon. Yet there's no TT lettering on the JDF shirts. Right, okay. Do they pay DED anything, asks Mark. This is the Audi TT question. The Audi TT takes its name from the successful motor racing tradition of NSU in the British Isle of Man TT Tourist Trophy motorcycle race. NSU began competing in the TT in 1911, later merged into the company now known as Audi. I didn't know that, Mark, thank you. The Audi TT also follows the NSU 1000 TT, the 1200 TT and TTS cars of the 60s in taking their names from the race. TT name has been attributed to the phrase technology and tradition. Okay, didn't know that. What about the Audi TT? There's a good target, says somebody else. DED, Department of Economic Destruction. There are 4 T's in that, and a better name for them. That's from Kit the Other. Lots of lads have got TT tattoos, so what action can they take on this? Well, again, that's kind of a personal use thing. There's no benefit, no economic benefit derived from that. I totally agree with Mark's comments earlier, says Neil. Martin has promoted the TT for many years, and bushes are synonymous with the races. These government officials and many of our MHK seem determined to destroy our tourist sector. Regards from Neil. Okay, anything else? This is about Tynwell Mills. Sandpiper Channel Islands. New owners of Tynwell Mills have 80 pubs, run the franchise of Costa Coffee, Iceland Foods, Burger King, Crew Clothing, Jack Wills, George and Craig's. Might be some changes, suggests Ian. Okay. Let me just have a read of this, which is the official word from the Department of Economic Development that might explain their position. The Department of Economic Development works with many partners and stakeholders in the promotion of the Isle of Man TT races and the Isle of Man Festival of Motorcycling. As part of this work, investment has been made in registering, monitoring and protecting third-party use of the TT brand, logos and wordmark to ensure the intellectual property rights of the TT brand is protected. This allows our official sponsor partners to promote their association with the TT and generate a return on their investment. The revenue generated by the T commercial programme is reinvested back into the event. As part of its ongoing work, the department regularly contacts businesses that may be in breach of its rights, as has occurred in this instance with Bushes. The department recognises the value of Bushes' contribution to the TT, and their commitment to entertainment is well known and enjoyed by visitors and locals alike. The department does, however, have an obligation to protect the official use of the TT brand and maximise income for the continued growth and success of the event. The department's committed to finding a solution and are continuing talks with Bushes to reach a solution that's mutually acceptable. That's the official word on this. And as somebody suggested early on, was it Mark, what they ought to do is to say, listen, we know that you do a good job. We know that you're not becoming a billionaire off this, so I'll tell you what, 50 quid and we can give you the rights to carry on for 5 years or something like that. The equivalent of a peppercorn rent might be the answer, I don't know. Or it might well be that Martin is playing a canny game and making a big fuss about this, and actually that is kind of what government always planned to do anyway. I don't know. Who knows? Perhaps Martin does. Maybe he'll tell us. DED Corpy tried to close Bushy's tent down last year to shift fans to the Villa Marina area, says somebody else. Next they'll be threatening churches for advertising TTTs, says Steve. Okay. Rebecca says on our Facebook page, Bushes have been promoted to the TT since the brewery began. Now all of a sudden DED is concerned about unknown promoters. DED needs to walk along the prom and across the island to see how many bikes, bikers and holiday makers are wearing Bushes merchandise. Get real and wake up to the real promoters of the TT. Well, yes, but I mean that goes both ways, doesn't it? If everybody's wearing Bushes merchandise and stuff and they're selling some of that because they're part of the TT, then shouldn't they pay some sort of a licensing fee for it? Don't know. I'm just playing devil's advocate, really. This TT thing is typical storm in a Manx teacup. Government owns the TT brand. The island makes money from it. Some businesses pay a lot of money to use it in association with the races. Bushes is synonymous with the TT. Nobody denies this. However, they don't pay to be an official partner. It was a bit cheeky of Bushes to try to use TT in its own registered trademark. Now the entire nation's offended on behalf of Bushes. Bushes Beer Tent is a TT institution. Long may it stay. But if it wants to use the TT brand, it should pop a few quid into the public coffers, says Amy. Well, I think that's a valid point, Amy. Yeah. Stu, I agree with your texter that DED should be disbanded. There are no doubt some people in some areas of it that are doing good work, but as far as the TT goes, it's a laughingstock. NEC Bike Show in November was a booze trip for officials and riders paid for by us. The officials tasked with organising the races have become over-friendly with teams and riders. The Villa Gaiety should be run by the tourism department, not DED. That from Ian.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Should the way that the island funds core services be reviewed? And MHK has criticised the rating system, which he believes unfairly hits those on lower incomes. Member for Ramsey, Laurie Hooper, says the government must evaluate how it funds national services like sewerage infrastructure to ensure a more equitable system for the Manx people. He was opposed to the 6.5% increase in the toilet tax approved by Tynwald in December last year. What do you think? Do you agree with him? Should the way national services are funded be reviewed? Would one charge for everyone be preferable to the current system, or would that be unworkable? I think he alluded to the fact that our headline rate of income tax is low and that makes us competitive, but it means that there are all these little stealth taxes to make up the shortfall. And another way of looking at it is that rather than looking at different ways to actually raise money in terms of taxation, should government be looking at ways of reducing the amount of money it costs to run itself? Should we all be hoping to pay less tax, actually, rather than more? Doesn't matter how we pay it. Should we be paying less? Does government try and do too much? Is it too profligate with our money? Just some thoughts to throw into the mix there. I'd welcome your views. Dave called, why should somebody on a low income pay more in the sewerage rate than the Severton Hotel or any other big hotel? Doesn't apply to commercial premises. Why should profitable businesses not pay, but people on low incomes do? Well, yeah, I suppose you'd have to decide whether or not all the businesses that might have to pay it are profitable or not. I know that a lot of businesses are running just about in a keep themselves afloat way without necessarily making big profits. Surely the easiest way to solve this problem is to provide everybody with a water meter and charge them for what they use. Electric's charged this way, gas, oil, etc. You pay for what you use. The only other way is an all-island rate, says Alan. Thanks, Alan. The government simply needs to do what we all have to do and learn to live on less money. However, they're not prepared to do this. They're still infested with highly paid seat warmers, says Paul. Hey boy, learn to live within your means. You're having a laugh. This government's sole aim is to ensure that the Wednesday Night Club and their companies are kept in work with overpriced contracts. And that's only to ensure the directors' fees are paid into their bulging bank accounts. Facts and opinions from Frank. Thank you, Frank. Illuminati already in Wednesday Night Club. Well, so mote it be. That's all I can say. If this dubious charge was raised via income tax, then more people would have to pay, not just ratepayers. In turn, the amount needed to be charged in theory should be less. I'm not sure. I mean, renters pay these things as well. It's usually included in the rent, but it's still liable on rental properties. They want to put the rates up. Come and have a look at the tip I live next door. 2 breeze blocks on the roof, a rubbish in garden and longtails. We can win, can we? What? I don't quite see the point of that, but there you go. What's this? The government is overmanned in every department. The days of England overpaying the VAT are over. Yeah, that's true. An independent hatchet man should go through all the departments and reorganise and lose the lazy bored job for lifers, says Dave. I can see some benefits in that. Yes, he is. Let's go to the lines. Ken's on to talk about the sewerage rate. Hello, Ken.
I was going to wait until the MUA, or chairman of the water, and actually came on and went to Tynwald about how much the water rate was going to go up by.
Yeah.
Because if you use the same analogy as last year, when Alfie Cannon, who was the chairman, who's now the Treasury Minister, he used the RPI, which in December, based on Manx inflation, December 2015, which was only, of course, 2.3%.
Right.
So it only went up slightly. But they also did the same for the sewage. Because the sewage this year, they used November's rate, which was 6.5%. Yes, it only is £8, but it's a never-ending things going up, because if they use the same for the water rate, it's going to be £20-odd.
Right. I'll trust you're working out on this because I've got to that stage in my life now where all that I want is for me to earn the money and the government to have it all and give me spends and tell me what I can spend on myself because, working out where they're taking money from is just going to infuriate me, I think.
Yeah, well, last year they used a 2.3 increase, which was the December's RPI rate. Now, RPI is going up. That's the retail price index, I think. It's going up, I think early in the year, of course, last year it was 4% in August. Now it's 5.6, then 6.5 in November, which they use for the sewage charge.
Right.
And
is it not the same? I thought it was the same thing, but clearly not.
No. They use whatever the monthly rate is for that month. Typical civil servants, what answer do you want?
Right.
How much money do you want? And we work it out accordingly. I think RPI has probably increased by another 0.1, so it's probably going to be about 6.6. Figures out on Friday.
So what's the fairest way to do it then, Ken?
Well, either have an average for the year, or don't put it up at all and wait to see what the government reform is they promised about the rating system. Because the rates, to me, is for your local services. And at the moment, it looks like the rates are going to be all 50% to essential taxation. And Laurie Hooper's quite right. There should be, capital. You work what you're going to do and get that from other means.
Right.
The Treasury, of course, used to give us money to the water board. I think that's gone down.
Yes, it has.
They're putting that back, so they've got to make the money some with it. Basically, somebody said about the British Rail or Rail Cross, there's supposed to be improvements. You don't do improvements as you improve services, that should cut costs. So surely it should be cutting costs, like the MUA should allow you to read your own meter and trust you to give them the right, rather than send a guy round to read your meter every 3 months.
Well, I mean, my question about all these things is where's the money been going for decades that they've been charging us for these things and saying, but we've got all this infrastructure to pay for. You've always had that to pay for. And surely when it was all working fine, you should have been putting money to one side, and it seems that they've not been doing that. I don't know.
Have they not been charging us the right amount in the first place? Have they been living off the, Treasury loans, not loans, but, here's some money to keep the service going. But I do want, hopefully the chairman will come and do a sensible inflation rise. The other one, which is only 2.2 or something. I do wonder whether they should have an average increase or no increase. Say, and hopefully the commissioners are listening, and they won't put rates up either, because I just don't trust them. If the government, if they put the rate up again by rate of inflation 6 point, rate of inflation, people aren't getting paid that rate, are they?
No, absolutely not. No, that's the problem. All right, Ken, I need to move on, but thank you very much for your call. On the water rate, says Maria, why should one person living alone pay the same as a family of 6? It's not fair. No, I agree. I'm a great believer in the user pays principle, which seems to work for me, but clearly there's no real taste for that as far as government's concerned. They're looking at other ways of doing things rather than using that as a principle or using water meters. I think there have been statements about the cost of doing that. As a consumer of water, I think I'd probably be quite happy to actually pay for a meter, because I'd probably get my money back in a couple of years if my water usage was metered. How about all the water leaks at roadsides? That annoys me, especially as we pay top dollar for water. At the same time, it's going to waste, says G. What is it about the fact that we can't seem to build drainage properly? Robin Peel called earlier. The whole situation's wrong. This is talking about taxation. A quarter of the island's income comes from online gambling. That concerns me. Manx Telecom are making redundancies, and all I hear of are people talking about how bad the situation is in the island. I know that they need to keep the money coming in, but taxing those at the bottom is not the answer in my view. The island man's in a bit of a pickle. They need to get the thinking caps on and work out how they can get revenue from somewhere else. Well, that's what they're doing all the time, I think. Like attracting more high-tech manufacturing companies over. I'm sure they're working on that, Rob. The days of banking being a boost to the island's income are gone, so is tourism, so they need something else. Good points. It's the mistake to think water meters would save you money as the authority charged rateable or metered, whichever is highest, says Tom. Thank you, Tom. Stu, I think we're going to have an extremely tough 2017. We have banks and CSPs closing shop. This is mainly due to Alan Bell and Eddie Tears signing all these agreements worldwide and failing to see the consequences. Well, I don't think they had an option, did they? No wonder they jumped ship, and don't go on defending them. I'm one of the casualties. I think that it was inevitable that we were going to have to sign those agreements or be sort of pariahs in the international finance market. In the beginning, I agreed with saying the government stick to your budget. Some people on the island have to reduce heating, food, etc. when the government put various items up. I do worry about health, though, especially after Kate paying for the little boy's treatment, even though the doctor said no. My concern is that there are other children on the island with the same illness. She's already said that something will have to go. With health, you don't know how many people are going to need treatment. I do think there are too many chiefs in government. I know children make people emotional, me included, says Katie.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Are proposals to change future public sector pensions the right move? This is a very contentious issue in the Isle of Man. Employees are being consulted over proposals that would see workers take a 6% benefit cut and increase their pension contributions by 2.5%. The changes stem from reforms approved by Tynwald last year. Is this a step in the right direction when it comes to a fairer system for pensions? Should all employees, both in the public and private sectors, have access to workplace pensions? That's something that's taking off in a big way in the UK, I think, at the moment. And John says, I wish these characters had stopped saying that we're all living longer. We're not. Well, I think that statistically, as a population, people are living longer. So I think that they're quite right, technically, John. I mean, yes, if you were to ask George Michael or somebody that dies young, then they're not living longer. But I think statistically, the population as a whole is living longer. One of your contributors has suggested a cap of 18,000 a year public sector pensions, but I would think that 10,000 would be enough, as they'll also receive their state pension. There's been comment that a legal challenge would be made, but this was to come about, then surely the challenge should be to themselves, as they were in charge when this situation developed. Well, yeah, the trouble with that is, I don't know where to begin, really, with where the trouble with that is. But if you've been paid into a pension, even if it's a generous pension scheme, in the expectation that you'd be pulling, 20 or 30,000 a year out of it when you retire, and then somebody says, "Oh no, we've changed the rules on that. You're only going to get 10 grand." That's not fair, is it? Surely. Who would decide what's a fair salary to receive? Now, 10,000 a year is a lot of money for some people. For people who've been earning 70, 80, 100,000 a year or more than that, then it's not very much money at all in retirement. So, we've got to be careful not to get too prescriptive about things like this. One man's meat and all the rest of it. I'm glad Chris Thomas wants to help the people who pay his pension when he retires at 55 and they're still working till 67. Fair point, I think, yeah. We'll soon be putting an extra 20% of government workers' salaries into their pension funds, so plus in 5 years' time the top-up figure will reach 100 million a year. Totally unacceptable to workers in the wealth-creating private sector who will be paying for this, while people have to wait 2 years in pain for operation because there's no money. It's disgraceful. Yes, I think you make some very good points about that, and it's back to what I've been thinking for a while. Where is all this tax going? It's crazy, and I know that we lost a big chunk of our income with the VAT agreement and all the rest of it, but I'm convinced that everybody's paying more tax than ever before. And where is it going? All we're being told is, there's no money for this, no money for that. Why? Where's it going? What benefit are we getting from the amount of tax that we pay? Bigger question maybe for another day. Bob Cawley said it all sounds like political speak on the pensions. Unless the reforms stop adding millions to the pensions bill every year, then it's a waste of time. It's just picking at the edges. Most schemes have been stopped by now, certainly in the private sector, I think they have, yeah. Unless this is going to stop the money paid out going up, then it's a complete waste of time. Fair dues, okay. Final comment from John. If they drew 100,000 a year when working, all the more reason they don't need a huge lump sum and ridiculous pension in retirement. Well, yeah, but we all live up to our income. I've had various levels of income over the years. From doing really well and having loads of money coming in to being pretty skint and having very little coming in. And you live according to your income, don't you? So if you've been drawing 100,000 a year or whatever, then you're going to have a huge mortgage probably and all the rest of it. And probably bills that people on more modest incomes wouldn't even think of. Sheer greed, seemingly untouchable. No wonder there's so much anger, says John. Okay, fair dues. And is this another one on the pensions? Hey boy, it's the pure greed of those retired that have returned to government that's emptying the pot. Coppers, failed MHKs, teachers, civil servants, all are getting a vast pension, then a second one from their new jobs for the boys' club. Sheer out-and-out greed. Facts, says Frank. I thought you could only get the pension once. I didn't think you could get 2 goes at the public sector pension. Robin Peel, Stu, you keep asking where the money's gone. Take a look at all the departments, the number of new vehicles they've bought recently. Do they need them all? Prison is so big now they can't staff it, and the hospital is much bigger. That's where the money's probably gone. Thank you, Rob.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
You're listening to the latest Talking Heads podcast, featuring highlights from the programme over the past week.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Does the TT brand need to be protected? We talked about it yesterday briefly, but this story is rumbling on. Clearly, a political representative of the Department of Economic Development will meet with Bush's brewery boss Martin Brunschweiler when he returns to the island to sort out the issue of using the TT initials on Bush's merchandise. Earlier this week, Bush's released a statement saying that they were seeking legal advice on the matter. And, yesterday on the programme when we talked about this, I think 95% of people who got in touch with the programme thought that the government had scored an own goal with this and were doing it wrong and it was unfair and all the rest of it. You have to say that listening to Rob Callister talk there, he does make some good points, don't you think? Manx Radio also talked to Bush's boss Martin Brunschweiler, who says the company's legal team will hold talks with the DED today. Does the TT brand need to be protected like this? Is it all a little bit heavy-handed, bit of a storm in a TT cup? Or is this a bit of a fuss about not very much? Tell us your thoughts on this. Hey boy, of course the government should protect the TT name. How else will the taxpayer fund the MHK's 2 weeks in the VIP tent quaffing champagne and endless trips to the TT shop to get goodie bags filled to the brim with merchandise and DVDs to hand out to family and friends? You're a waste of taxpayers' money, Messrs. Callister and Skelly, and that from Frank. Robin Peel called. I can't believe that they're doing that to Martin. I speak to visitors for the TT at the Lease Museum and all they want is to have half a pint of bitter in the Bushy's tent during the fortnight. I hope they haven't upset Martin too much. Let's go to the lines. We've got Trevor on. Hello, Trevor.
Stu, you probably recall that I used to be the head of motorsport at DED
Yes.
until about a year or so ago when I retired.
Yeah.
So one or two things I'd like to say about this, because I've heard an awful lot of complete and utter nonsense over the last couple of days on this issue. But first of all, I should say that I don't work for DED anymore, so my comments aren't representing DED and in no way associated with them.
Okay.
So I want to say that. Firstly, this has been personalised by people who think that this is a DED or government go at Martin at Bush's, and nothing could be further from the truth, I'm sure, about this, because it's not a personal thing at all. This is about the business model in which the TT has to run by. And I think people need to really get real about what they expect here. The TT is nowadays about half funded by the taxpayer, and about half funded, roughly, by commercial income. And that commercial income is derived from a number of sources, and one of them is licensing and income coming from the TT brand, which has to be registered. As you know, copyright and trademarks you have to have a registered trademark, and that gives you the exclusive right to use that trademark, in this case the TT logo and the TT words, in relation to the TT on the Isle of Man, not generally.
Yes.
So that's where it comes from. And I used to have lots and lots of conversations with local traders, international traders, trademark lawyers about protecting the brand almost on a daily basis, because you will be surprised how much attack there is on the TT branding, because it's become popular and people want to make money on the back of it without paying for it. So we had these conversations regularly, and particularly with local traders, and we always took a bit of a view locally, and I'm sure DED will do now, about supporting local trade.
Yeah.
So there's nothing about Bush's which is a DED issue. Martin's a great guy. He makes great beer, runs a great beer tent. I'm sure everybody associated with the TT is glad he is there. But his core business is making beer. It's not retailing TT T-shirts. And that's an area which is really important for DED and commercial income for the TT. people may be surprised to know that the official merchandise comes from a retailer who has an exclusive license and pays a heavy price for that.
Yeah.
And once DED or anybody, doesn't be you or me running any organisation, takes someone's money for an exclusive license to produce TT branded clothing, they have an obligation. It's a legal obligation, a commercial obligation. It's a moral obligation to that person whose money you've taken to protect their interests.
Absolutely.
So if someone comes forward and starts making TT T-shirts or T-shirts with the word TT on it, that is breaking that person's exclusive license which you've granted them. Therefore, you have to do something about it. And people are sort of making out that this is an optional thing that someone in DED or someone somewhere has decided to do because they've got nothing else to do or they want to be difficult. That's far from the truth. You just have to do this. And this is an issue which is being blown up out of all proportion.
Do you think, Trevor, that maybe what's happened is that this is a case of custom and practice? You say that the DED is usually fairly cautious as far as local firms are concerned and tries to help local businesses. Do you think that maybe this is just something that people have maybe noticed but not been particularly bothered about in the past?
We always noticed it.
Okay. So why wasn't something done sooner then?
Everything about this. Well, I can tell you that apparently a registration came from Bush's TT in 2014.
Yeah.
We had quite highly paid commercial trademark lawyers. We had a TT watch service, which indicated to us any attempt to register a TT-related trademark, and we opposed every single one of them.
Okay.
And if that had come to our attention 2 years ago, and of course I don't have access now to our lawyers or the people who run the system which alerts us on these things, I don't know why it didn't come to our attention. Certainly I was never asked about it. And we never had a view about it. If we did have a view about it, we would have spoken to Martin at that time and said, this is a no-go. Okay.
And do you think that might have just got rid of this whole problem? Had somebody at the DED just picked up the phone and spoken to Martin and said...
I can't talk for what's happened now, and I won't talk for what's happened now. These are decisions for other people, and I'm sure they've tried to handle it appropriately, and obviously there's been a view in the public that they haven't, but who knows what actually happened.
But this is what you're saying effectively is that this is something that the government, wouldn't be doing its job properly unless it tried to protect the trademark.
Well, it runs a bit deeper than that as well. Given the nature of the way the TT is funded, if you want to give up the commercial income of it and not protect your rights and not make money from the TT, and people always say DED is being greedy by making money out the TT. They don't make a penny out the TT. Or every single bit of money that's derived from commercial income helps pay for the event. So if people, the general public of the Isle of Man, are saying, we should allow anyone to use the TT trademarks and, it's a free-for-all, think about that commercial income and where you're going to get the money from to run the TT. Because effectively, DED or somebody would have to go to the Treasury and say, that money, let's not talk about, can't talk about the exact sums, but it's several £1 million. That money you were going to spend on other things, spend it all on TT. What would be people's reaction to that?
And I suppose that the way that trademark law works and that contracts work is that you can't have exceptions. If you say, somebody's got to pay for the use of it, you can't say except, John Henry and whoever. You've got to apply it to everybody equally.
Absolutely. You either protect your trademark or you don't. You cannot say, if you went to court and said to the court, we want to prevent this person from using our trademark, but we've allowed that person, the court would take a view on that, wouldn't they? They would say, well, why are you picking on this person? If you don't protect your trademark with everybody, why are you doing it for this person? So this is why I'm saying it's not a personal thing about Bushes. It never would be. It's the thing about protecting the trademark, which that's not me anymore, which DED absolutely has to do. It's not an optional issue.
All right, Trevor, I really appreciate your call. You've cast some light on that subject, and I'm very grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Stu. you.
Cheers. I'm grateful for Trevor Hussey calling in, former head of motorsport at the DED, because I think he's cast some light on that, and it kind of confirms what I'd thought, what I'd presumed about the situation. But a couple of people disagree. One says Trevor Hussey, prison officer most of his life, now world-renowned expert on branding. Well, just because you've done something most of your life doesn't mean to say that you can't learn a whole load of new skills, does it? And Paul has a pop at Trevor Hussey for supporting his mates. I don't know that that's fair, to be honest. I thought that he cast some light on the situation. It's a pity the DED didn't spend as much time and effort into producing entertainment for the everyday fans instead of chasing the pound signs, protecting the brand. The department's surely there to encourage growth, not kill it, says Alan. Well, First lady that was interviewed in the street regarding Bush's TT, her tone of voice was exactly right, especially in the way that she said the government should be applauding Bushies, not suing them. Well done, madam. Ditto the last chap there, says Albert. That's from the Vox Pops earlier on. How much of the island do Heron and Brearley own? Island Automatic Spa with post office, etc. Isle of Man government seems to want to give all the contracts to them. Bush's TT beer tent is just that. It's a tent during TT. Don't know that sort of advances the debate any. How convenient and inspirational it is that certain titles can disappear overnight, eh? Typical government, do as I say, not do as I do. For example, don't drink and drive, but we can. Declare all earnings and income to the taxman, but we don't. Typical farcically incompetent chair polishers with nothing better to do. Opinions or facts? Question mark. That from Frank. There's a certain garage on Domain Road called Quick Fit, spelt the correct way with a Q, not unlike the actual Quick Fit, spelt with a K, from the UK, but completely different companies. Has the government done anything about that? No, says Neil. Well, they wouldn't. Well, it's you know, they've not got a dog in that fight, have they? They don't own the rights to Quick Fit. Now, if Quick Fit in the UK, is there a Quick Fit in the Isle of Man? I don't know. One presumes that there isn't, and that for that reason, Quick Fit in the UK don't really care about it, and they don't feel that it's infringing on their trademark or costing them business, or that the place on Domain Road is making money by misrepresenting who they actually are. So, I mean, that's nothing for government to get involved in at all. Whereas TT, it is, of course. Stu, it's about time someone challenged Bushies. They've been piggybacking on the TT for years now. If you remember last TT, Bushies wouldn't pay for any entertainment on the prom, but they make a good profit from the fortnight. All right, well, there you go. There's somebody that's not a big Bushies fan. Bushies, Manx company owned by a local resident, pays taxes, shed load of money in charity. The Bushies brand is known all over the world. Maybe it should be the other way around, and the Isle of Man government pays Bushies. What? This is ridiculous. All residents of the Isle of Man are in this together. Who is Muppet who started this? Oh, anyway, who's the Muppet who started this? Rob. I think that's from Rob and not talking about Rob. Jacks do a TT shirt. They'll be after them next. Well, yeah, they would if Jacks do a TT shirt and they don't pay any royalties for it. And that TT shirt is sold because it's got the letters TT on it and it's associated with the TT races. It's all very sad. I would say that people who buy the pub T-shirts want them because they like the pub. For example, Jacks and Bushies. Maybe the official T-shirt people could pay Martin to sell his designs too, says Neil. Well, it's dead simple. If that is the case, then all you need, and I've got a couple of Bushies T-shirts that I'm sure don't mention the TT anywhere on them. If you're right, then why would they put the letters TT on them at all? I suspect that by having the letters TT on means that they're actually going to sell more of them. Well, another TT fiasco. Sorry, can I say TT? This is really showing the Isle of Man penny-pinching government in a bad light. This will become such a hot potato that nobody will want to touch it. No wonder Vision 9 got out. Stu, you've hit the nail on the head. It's not what's been done, it's the heavy-handed way that they've gone about it. I would suggest that a face-to-face meeting with Martin from the outset would have been the best approach, given his long-standing involvement and commitment to the TT. Litigation should only be threatened as a very last resort when all communication's broken down, says Brian. Good point, Brian, thank you. And a sensible suggestion as well. TT stands for Tourist Trophy, and years ago there were lots of TTs, not only on the Isle of Man, so what happens if they want to start to rerun them, says Gary. Ownership or otherwise of the letters TT in relation to the races aside, to hear the minister confess what he regrets, that he regrets the letter. It wasn't the minister, it was Rob Callister, who's the political member with responsibility for motorsport. To hear him confess that he regrets the letter that led to this nonsense being started and admit that he should perhaps have rung Martin Brunschweiler is most shaming and highlights the amateurish fashion which the department seems is appropriate to operate as a ministerial representative of the Manx government. He and the DED clearly have no grasp of how they should be seen to conduct their affairs. DED, not fit for purpose, should be disbanded. Minister makes the Isle of Man once more sound like a banana republic in the eyes of those outside the bounds of this rock. On top of the recent performance of the Chief Minister at the Select Committee in the UK, further reinforces this impression of amateurish conduct that clearly exists in so much of the Manx government, regards from Mark. Down off the fence on that one then, Mark. Treasure Hussey stalled when you tackled him about DD's people not picking up on Martin registering Bush's TT. It says it all. It wasn't picked up on. It's now registered so tough. The T-shirts of Bush's brewery, not official TT merchandise, says Ian. Well, yeah, I mean, in fairness to Trevor Hussey, and I thought that his contribution was really valuable. I think he gave us a real insight into the whole thing on this. But, you know, he can't speak for them because he's no longer a member of the department or a member of the team. So he made it very clear he was speaking in a personal capacity. And it might be something that he just didn't know the answer to. Who owns the original TT logo, the red T and yellow T together? Was this not already owned by somebody, thus being why the government set up a new Isle of Man TT website and a new TT logo with a swish and 3 legs on it? I don't know the answer to that. Listening to Trevor, it just seems to me that the Isle of Man government have got involved in matters that are outside of their remit. Also, using the brand TT is not an optional issue, says Trevor. So clearly he's saying, yes, go for such as the TTTs at various church halls, etc. I don't think he was saying that at all. And by the way, government make a fortune out of the TT, and that there are many well-paid employees and ex-employees, well-paid and oh so very well pensioned on the back of it. That from Albert. Okay. I mean, what you've got to remember is that the government doesn't make money necessarily for itself. It makes money or saves money for the benefit of all of us, doesn't it? You know, it's not an entity in its own right as such. It is there to represent us. So really what we're saying is that it's the island that owns the TT brand and expects to get a return from commercial people who use that. So I don't see quite the problem that a lot of people do. I think this has maybe been blown up a bit too much. And I do think that maybe the way it's been handled has not been done properly. I think maybe it's been mishandled or badly handled. But having said that, I think that the basics of the argument I would find in favour of the government, I think, because they are there. And if they didn't do it, you know, if we ended up with a load of people coming over with transit vans full of TT merchandise that they were selling at next year's TT, that they'd not paid a penny towards the Isle of Man government or the licence holders, and so they were effectively defrauding all of us taxpayers, we'd be up in arms about why doesn't the government do something about it? The fact is that is what they're doing. They're trying to protect a trademark that they have an interest in or that they represent. I don't know if they own it outright or if they license it from ACU events or whoever it might be. But, you know, they are there. And as Trevor Hussey said, there are lots of very expensive trademark lawyers who are employed to make sure that people don't take liberties with it. I think that the government in that respect is doing what we pay them to do. It's just the way that they've gone about it in this case, maybe.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Is the hospital short-staffed? The mother of a severely disabled young man says her son's been waiting for a vital operation for more than a month now. Diane Torrin has contacted Manx Radio about 20-year-old Nathaniel's plight in the hope the publicity will help them secure the bed he needs at a Liverpool hospital. She's been inspired to do this following a similar case in the Isle of Man recently, which resulted in an island teen getting the bed that she needed at the Royal Liverpool University Hospital. What do you think about this? What do you make of it? Is the hospital short-staffed when it comes to frontline services? Or is it inevitable that there'll be times when there are pinch points? Tell us what you think about this. Normally when we talk about Nobles, people who've been through the system there report glowingly about it and say that they've had fantastic service and everybody's been super and all the rest of it. I'm not looking to lay any blame here, but it seems that something has gone wrong with the system. What can be done to put this right? We tend not on this programme to look at individual cases, but this one is very important, and I think all our hearts go out to Diane Torrin with this story because it sounds as though she's been sort of passed around from pillar to post. Yes, we're going to get the operation done. No, we've not got the right equipment. And then she says, well, I'll get the equipment, not a problem. Oh, well, can't do it anyway. I mean, it just seems a nonsense, doesn't it? So let's see your comments on this anyway. Why do we have to send these kids to Liverpool? It's a good hospital, but surely there are other hospitals around the UK which can help. Well, this came up the other day when we were talking about it. My presumption, and I might be completely wrong about this, is that I expect that our health service in the Isle of Man has got some sort of a deal with the UK for when we need to send people off island for operations. And I expect that the nearest is Liverpool, and that's why, it is the natural progression, if something can't be dealt with at Nobles, that people from the Isle of Man go to Liverpool instead as our nearest UK hospital. I guess that's the way it works. But it raises an important question. So, if Liverpool is, although it seems from all the news that you see that the UK health service, the NHS in the UK, is completely swamped anyway. And has got very little spare capacity, so maybe it would be the same anywhere. But I don't know what the situation is in terms of this, whether or not the Isle of Man government has to pay for treatment like this that happens in Liverpool. If so, then could they not do a contract with Bupa? In that, if you're prepared to pay privately, you can usually get to the head of a queue. So might that be a better way? I don't know. I'm not a health expert, and I know that we've got lots and lots of health experts working for the department and at Nobles who will understand this far better than I do. And maybe all these different eventualities have been looked at and sifted through to find out the best option. And maybe using the system via Liverpool is the best option. I don't know. If joiners and brickies or virtually any other profession retired when they're 55, then they'd be in short supply also. Okay. Hey boy, yes, the hospital is short staffed, but it's severely overstaffed with clipboard hugging, chair polishing, keyboard tappers. Right then. I wonder what the nurse to managerial ratio truly is. Maybe Rob Callister could tell us, as he appears to be Howard's anti-press spokesman at the moment. That from Frank. Lee said soonest man did, Frank. It's a sad state of affairs when the 8th richest country in the world has people begging for medical treatment. It's shameful, says Neil in Union Mills. Stu, very sorry about the young man waiting here for the operation, but this is not uncommon at Nobles. Pleased that somebody has brought this to light. Lots and lots of people are waiting for treatment, says John. Okay, well, maybe it's time to just have a look at this, and if things are going wrong, then maybe it's time that this was all looked at a bit more closely. Ward 6 at Nobles is shockingly bad. My dad was admitted on Christmas Day, and they treated him like an inconvenience until he died last Friday. I'm sorry to hear that. My mum, 2 sisters and I slept on the floor by his bed as we were too scared to leave him. They throw food at them but don't check to see if they can feed themselves. My dad couldn't, so if we hadn't stayed, then he wouldn't have eaten or drunk. There's a massive staff shortage, but also to some of the staff it's obviously just a job. One doctor was so rough with my dad that he cried out in pain. This same doctor spent most of his time drinking coffee and smoking. Our MHK was informed things improved, but it was too little and too late. Gosh. Oh, and the Manx doctor, who was very caring and in the right job, was having to move away as there are too many foreign locums and he can't get a full-time job. Okay, well, can't go into that. Obviously, that might not be the actual reason. It strikes me that there are far too many pinch points occurring with the health service. This is the second case that we're hearing about in the last few days where vital life and death care is lacking. My heart also goes out to the frontline nurses who are, through no fault of their own, unable to give the care that they're trained to give to those desperately needing it. That from Pam. Good point, Pam. I think people generally agree that the frontline service is doing a cracking job under very difficult circumstances. I have to say that, even when I'm benevolent dictator for life, I wouldn't be the right person to decide on where healthcare budgets go, and I feel sorry for people who've got to make those life and death decisions. I did think that last year when there was the story about the young chap that needed the very expensive drug, and at first he was refused, and then there was a furore about it, and I think Kate Beecroft, when she was elected and then promoted to health minister, reversed that decision and said yes, you can have the drug, but I think it was the thick end of £200,000 a year for the treatment to improve his life. And absolutely no problem at all with him having that. But it did worry me at the time that was maybe, 50 hip replacements that we were going to have to be put on the back burner to pay for this drug. The people who've got to make those decisions really do deserve our support. And whether or not they're getting it right, I don't know. But it's certainly a set of decisions that I wouldn't like to make. We need to educate our children in health through physiology and anatomy, help them experience the responsibility of taking care for themselves. The medical model is outdated and prehistoric, causing health retardation in the masses through depending on somebody else to look after them. Let's get a grip on self-care and no dependency. Well, that's all very well, but this 20-year-old young man is physically disabled and profoundly mentally disabled as well. So I don't know that any amount of education on healthcare would have done him any good. Hey boy, something I've always wondered about. Why did the government spend upwards of £150 million on a hospital only to then send patients to the UK? Seems an overly expensive scheme just to fill a building with desk munchkins, says Frank. Oh, come on, Frank. You're an intelligent man. It was always going to be the case, surely, that any hospital in the Isle of Man was going to be a general hospital that could deal with, I don't know, pick a number, 75% of local cases. But, I mean, in the UK, you've got a general hospital that does the majority of medical work. But then there are areas, centres of excellence, aren't there? So if you've got a heart problem or whatever, or a brain problem or whatever, you get sent to, not your local hospital, you get sent to one of these specialist places. It was inevitable that the Isle of Man was never going to be able to cater for absolutely everybody. I mean, let's face it, when you go in to get your bile gland reduced a wee bit, which is obviously swollen, then you'll not be able to get that done at Nobles. You'll have to go off island somewhere, probably Liverpool. But there's probably a waiting list. I understand that the waiting list for replacement hips and knees on the Isle of Man is double the time in the UK. If that's the case, then that simply isn't good enough. Paula says, so sad for that mother. Surely somebody can help her. Can the public yet again pay for him to go private? Well, I kind of get the impression that she was prepared to pay whatever it cost to sort out, to make sure that they had the right equipment and stuff to do the job. So I don't know that money is the issue there. But, I mean, is that... I know what you're saying, Paula, but is that the answer to this? If we've got problems like this, if we keep getting problems like this, does somebody need to look at the system and try and find a better way to do things? I don't know. People have to remember we're a small island. There's only so much money to go around. Does anyone know how much is spent per person on the island compared to, say, in Liverpool? I don't know the answer to that, to be honest, no. Educating the masses will leave the expertise and funding for those that most need it, Stu, says Anne. All right, well, that's a point, yeah. Maybe the majority of us do use the health services which are provided free at the point of contact too easily. Maybe we could do more for ourselves. I know that a lot of new mums are very nervous. Anything goes wrong with the baby, it gets a sniffle or whatever, and it's straight down to A&E. So maybe it is a case of making better use of the facilities that we've got to try and free them up to be able to do more of this kind of thing. Steve says there are so many empty theatres at Nobles with the very latest medical machines and nobody to operate them. It's tragic. Is that true, Steve? It begs the question, why have we sort of invested a huge amount of money in facilities and equipment then if we've got nobody to run them? I suppose part of the problem is that the health service is a political football at best, isn't it? And I think it's probably right to say that it consumes most of the Isle of Man's income every year, health and social care. And so people will always be asking questions about whether or not things have been done properly. And different people will have different points of view on it. We've had lots of different health ministers over the last few years. How much impact they have, I don't know. But what do you think about this situation? What could be done? What should be done to try and help people like this young man who's been waiting a month now for supposedly an urgent operation? In this day and age, that just seems completely wrong to me. I don't know about you. Hi, Stu. The hospital was built to accommodate a population of 100,000. Powers that be are wanting another 15,000 residents now. God help us, says Joe. Well, yeah, but I mean, the hospital building itself, and from what we've heard, we've got operating theatres fully equipped with nobody to run them. So the facilities are there, the infrastructure is there. That's not a problem. And maybe if we had 15,000 more people paying taxes, or 5,000 people paying more taxes, then we'd be able to afford the doctors and nurses to staff the place. That seems to be the issue here. Stu, so sorry for this young lad and anybody else in a similar situation. I honestly believe there has not been and still isn't the political will to solve the health service issues. I disagree with you there. It means that people have to get off the backsides instead of all the excuses. For God's sake, start earning your corn. I expect that the new health minister will be rolling his sleeves up and getting stuck in there, to be honest. Stu, I went to the doctor's yesterday with a lump that suddenly appeared 5 weeks ago. Doctor said, I'm not worried about it, but I'll refer you to a skin specialist. I'll mark it as sinister stroke urgent. Otherwise, if just routine, you'll be waiting 2 years minimum. 2 years. How does that happen with the state-of-the-art hospital? Yes, we have the building, but no staff to fill it, obviously. Disgusted. Well, for a lump as well, I mean, you'd have thought that was a fairly quick procedure to check that out and put your mind at rest, or get it excised. Stu, as you mentioned before regarding a comment from Frank, Nobles is a general hospital. For specialist treatment, you will more than likely need to go to a specialist hospital in the UK. No different than general hospitals in the UK and specialist hospitals. A patient might need to be transferred to the specialists, says Pete. That's my understanding, Pete. Would like to see a breakdown of the prescription figures. Oh, right, well, we'll get to that story in a little while. As it's been said that the health service could swallow up the entire £1 billion Manx total spend, so there's going to have to be a payment system introduced so that those requiring treatment make some payment. Yeah, I think that might be the answer, I don't know. They took money from the National Insurance Fund to build this hospital. Now the state pension's unsustainable. I don't know if the state pension's unsustainable, certainly the public sector one is, and people have to go across for ops. Complete mismanagement coupled with the fact of unified NHS pension scheme putting off health workers wanting to come here, according to Derek. Right, okay, some good thoughts. Thank you very much for getting in touch with those. Stu, my wife's been waiting to see a skin specialist for 2 years. She phoned to be told, get your doctor to refer you again. In other words, back to the start, says Graham. Not good enough. That really isn't good enough. I mean, I'm not suggesting that everybody should be able to walk into Nobles tomorrow and get any problem that they've got sorted out, but it does seem that miscommunication, people being dropped off lists and not knowing about it, people having to sort of subvert the system to get the service that they're entitled to, it's all wrong, isn't it? Stu, no comparison with the young man waiting for his operation, but I've been waiting now for over a year for a knee replacement. My brother, who lives on the Wirral, went to the doctor with his bad knee, saw the specialist a few weeks later, then had his knee done, all within 12 weeks. The waiting list here is ludicrous. That said, I do hope the young man gets his treatment soon. That from Colin. Thanks, Colin. After Victoria Court's 12 nursing beds at the back of Glenside were closed, followed by both sides of Newlands, a loss of approximately 52 beds, the Isle of Man now has less nursing hospital beds than it's ever had in the past. So no wonder that we're in dire straits with bed availability, and access for routine operations procedures is affected as medical patients overflow to surgical and orthopaedic beds. That from D. Thank you, D. That's why people are having to work longer for their pension, because they use the NI fund for the hospital and we still have to wait, says Derek. I'm not sure if that's true. Patrick called. One has to be considerate of the Isle of Man's financial situation. Oh, always, Patrick. We're a small island. There's a limit to what we can afford. You have to be prepared to wait. I'm waiting for treatment for my eyes. I've had to wait a year, but that's part of life. In the 1860s, there wouldn't have been a health service or a hospital. We have to realise how lucky we are. Well, it's not like we don't pay for it, though, Patrick. I know what you're saying, but it's not as though, it's provided by some marvellous deity. I mean, we all pay our taxes to get that service. The question is whether or not we're getting good value for money. We have to be considerate of that, though, says Patrick, and of the staff of Nobles who do a superb job. There's a limit to what the Isle of Man can afford. It opens the whole debate again about whether or not taxation needs to go up then if we can't afford basic services, like a young man having to wait a month for supposedly an urgent and essential operation. I mean, that just isn't good enough if the service isn't fit for purpose if that's the situation. Stu, I have every sympathy with the lady in question, having gone through a similar situation with my own son 2 years ago, watching him on a daily basis for 3 months, getting seriously ill on a ward in Nobles. There was no magic fix, just letter after letter and many phone calls to MHKs to get him the care and surgery he needed in St Mark's Hospital, London, which resulted in him having major surgery, being returned to normal health within a period of 12 months after being in the care of the Isle of Man for 6 years, with absolutely no improvement and, in fact, a procedure and surgery on the island which nearly killed him. Seriously hope he gets the help she gets the help that she needs for her son as soon as possible. And that from Malcolm. Thank you, Malcolm. So many different experiences. I waited less than 12 months all told for diagnosis and treatment of basal cell carcinoma, a non-life-threatening condition at Wiston Hospital, where they removed it and did plastic surgery for skin graft on the NHS. Don't understand it, says Pam. Yeah, it's one of those things. There's not a simple answer to any of this, is there? And like I said earlier on, I would hate to be the person who had to make decisions on who gets healthcare and who doesn't. And it seems that with limited budgets, then that is going to increasingly have to happen. A hospital, everybody's complaining about the hospital, but if they can't get the staff, what can they do? Most wards are short of nurses. The ones that are left are overworked and stressed. They need to increase the wage to attract new staff, says Dave. Well, yes, but I mean, would we need to pay an awful lot more in the Isle of Man than the equivalent role in the UK? Why should people get paid more to work in the Isle of Man? Got lower tax, all sorts of things that ought to attract people. Maybe that doesn't work anymore, I don't know. Stu, the cost of living in the Isle of Man is so high that it totally negates the slightly lower tax rate unless you're extremely rich. Anyway, I know, having worked both the UK and here. All right, I'll take your word for it. You need to get low tax here out of your head. Free pay in the UK is more than here. It's gone up every year, ours only twice since 2008. Probably pay less tax in the UK now. Interesting. Time there was a cull on managers and admin at Nobles and more nurses, doctors and consultants at the coalface. It'd be interesting to know if Mrs. Beecroft has requested a breakdown of staffing numbers and how this relates to nurses, doctors and admin, etc. OK, thank you, Ray.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
That's it for the latest look back at Talking Heads. Our thanks to everyone who took part in the programme this week. If you'd like to get involved in the discussion yourself, you can call, text or email between midday and 2 p.m. on weekdays, or you can get your thoughts to us via Facebook or Twitter using the hashtag #MRTalkingHeads. You can listen back to each day's programme in full using the on-demand section of manxradio.com, and if there's anything you think we should be talking about on the programme, why not suggest it by emailing talk@manxradio.com. But that's it for now, so until next time, goodbye.
Don't sit in the slow lane. Join the fast lane right now with Shaw's all-new Superfast Plus broadband. Enjoy more bandwidth, amazing speeds and the best value on the island from just £23.95 per month. So don't be left behind. Get a piece of the high-speed action with Superfast Plus broadband from Shaw. For details, visit our stores in Douglas, Ramsey and Port Erin or click shaw.com.
Love being Shaw.
Terms and conditions apply.